Welcome, everybody, to BDE. In case you don't remember, we were a show from way back in the day. Is this a relaunch?
Where the hell have you been?
Yeah, where have you been?
I've been
besides patrolling the beaches of Nantucket looking for
I've been to the beach.
debris.
I've been in actually, let me tell you a funny story. I was in Liverpool when the stabbing occurred. Do you remember this summer? So I'm in Liverpool playing Royal Liverpool, great golf course, great people. And there's a stabbing that occurs. And the news didn't report that the person and the stabbing was like someone walked into this place. I know it's morbid. Child like dance school, and there was 9-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and this son of an immigrant stabs a bunch of children, kills them. It's crazy. And this is just right outside of Liverpool while I'm there. So I'm going paying my respects to the Beatles, because that's Beatlemania, right? And I'm in a bar having a pint and guys are getting pissed. And I'm like, let's get them. And I'm just kidding. And all of a sudden, the riots, like Liverpool started riots.
So a different kind of piss that you normally associate
with
being in a pub.
So I got the hell out of there and boarded a train for Glasgow, and the rest is history. So I started a riot this summer. You're welcome.
Because there was a lot of stuff going on in England over, there were some riots. There was stuff about if you tweet out misinformation, you go to jail and stuff. So,
and their energy policy is just upside down. What's going on there, Mark?
Well, I want to hear a little bit more fulsome description.
Yeah, so what else did you do?
What else you've been working on?
1 week.
Dude, I'm launching a new company that is a golf network. And we're shooting, this is crazy.
What's it called?
It's called Inspire Play. That's the name of the company. And we're shooting a reality TV show starting this weekend. We have the 16 top social media golf influencers, the top men, the top women, and it's a drama-filled reality show about who's the best golfer, and it's going to be fantastic.
Is it
just send an audition tape? I tried to audition for Mo's show.
Is this like Southern Charm and
it's kind of? Like some people say it's like golf meets Love Island, but we won't have as much romance. It's more of like MTV style contest matchups.
Is there a group house?
There is a cast house, and it's at a 30,000 square foot French chateau, which is down the street from the golf course. So it's happening at Champions Golf Club starting this Sunday. Cast party on Sunday night. It's going to be a blowout. So
that's awesome.
It's going to be fun.
I'll chug a beer each hole. That'd be my job.
We do have a reality show, a star that's coming to kick off the event. Kyle Cook from Summer House. So all you Bravo fans out there, which are listeners, they're probably spouses watch Bravo. I'm sure many.
I'm feverishly Googling.
Yeah, so, you need to look.
Kyle Cook. All right.
But if you show up, it'd be, man.
I'll chug a beer. I can play the John Candy role. I'd be good
I think these reality stars would be like, the Chuck Yates is in the room.
I did have that.
And what an eclectic celebrity magnet Chuck would be.
Totally.
It'd be
absolutely. But what's funny is I know this will happen. Chuck will go up to, let's say, one of our reality show stars. Her name's Gabby Powell. She's famous on YouTube and Instagram, etc. I bet if Chuck went up to her, they'd find someone they knew in common.
Oh, no question.
No question. Probably pictures of us together.
It's not the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It's the 2 degrees of Chuck Yates. You only need 2 jumps.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I'd be great at this. I need a TV role. I'd be so good at that.
And I figured
I'll work for cheap. I don't even need scale.
You guys have launched me into such social media fandom that now I'm going to go and start my own golf podcast, which is coming. So stay tuned for that.
I love this. So where are we going to start today? Let's do this. Let's start with oil. And
let's do it. There's a lot of shit going down.
Debate, and then we'll close with 9/11. But You want to level set us on oil? Because I don't even know where to start. I'm gonna have a big, huge mea culpa on this. But
same place we were last week, but lower.
Fair.
Demand is demand concerns, and the murky side of the supply demand equation is always demand. It's really in the driver's seat here. So you've had notably both the banks, the major banks, and OPEC yesterday. There was a piece in Reuters both about the banks and about OPEC. OPEC's lowered its 24 demand. They were pretty far ahead of everyone else, namely the IEA, which comes out with its update, I believe, on Thursday. But they took their 2024 demand down from 2.11 million barrels a day to 2.03 million barrels a day. Not a huge cut, but the direction matters more, just given where we are. They also took down 25 modestly from 1.78 million barrels a day to 1.74, so 40,000 barrels a day globally. As a result, and based on their own seemingly growing imbalance projections, B of A and Goldman notably knocked their forecast down for 25 by $5 down into the 70s. B of A is at 75, down from 80, and Goldman's at 77, down from 82. And of course, Citi's sitting at $60 a barrel in 2025, which I think is a textbook case of you're never wrong, just early. But we'll see. Interestingly, and Dan Pickering tweeted about this, I think yesterday. He does his eye-catching tweet after the close of the market every day. We do see oil and gas indexes outperforming the commodity. Mm-hmm. Crude's off, call it 16%, maybe a little bit more than that, since I ran the numbers, in about a month from its contemporary peak back in August. And the E&P heavy, or the more volatile index, the XOP, is down 12%. XLE, which is pretty heavily populated by the majors, is down only 11%. So a relative victory for us long-term oil and gas stockholders.
So, Kirk, you got anything to add before I mea culpa it?
Go ahead and mea culpa.
Okay. I'm just totally wrong. And oil is fairly priced. This drop is fair. The U.S. actually has it. I have no idea how we're at 13.2 or however many million barrels we are a day, but I've been consistently wrong for the last 10 years. There truly is 3 or 4 million barrels a day of OPEC spare capacity that could be on at the drop of a hat. We're hitting the oil glut. It's happening. I've been wrong. It just, like, at some point, you got to look up and go, holy cow, the United States is at record production. And I don't know how at these rig rates we are. We're just drilling faster. Completions are getting better.
You're saying that the price of the commodity is too low for them to be drilling so quickly?
No, I'm saying the price of oil is fair.
It's fair.
I.e., it's priced appropriately. Yeah, we're at record low inventories or 5-year low inventories and stuff, and everybody says that there's going to be this big cycle. It's not going to happen.
Well, let me ask you.
The U.S. can deliver it.
So you did say months ago when we got into our earlier predictions of, I think, end of year price, you were much lower than the two of us.
Oh, was I?
Yeah, we could look it up.
I think so.
We could look it up on Collide.
The problem of being 55 years old and a degenerate alcoholic is you don't remember that.
I did recall us discussing, and I think having consensus around the fact that there is going to be some political headline-driven dynamic that's going to put downward pressure on gasoline prices because that's such a big election.
Well, as we move into the election, for sure.
I paid $2.78 this morning.
For sure. People need to feel less pain at the pump. That's absolutely. But I will say that damn Costco line for gas is always the same. It's packed with at least 10 cars every time. And I never pick the fast lane.
Is it as bad as the fast charger experience?
No, I love I love getting gasoline for that purpose.
So really what, the headwinds here are twofold. Primarily from a headline standpoint, there was some talk in the financial media about, peak demand in China, meaning this is potentially a structural thing for gasoline and diesel, or is this just a kind of a temporary economic malaise? China's been the 800-pound gorilla in terms of demand growth over the last 15 years and its economic expansion miracle. How much alternative transportation fuel sources are showing up structurally? And then you have, and you referred to it, you've got the looming overhang of, does OPEC come December decide to feather those barrels that it's got shut in back into the market at a particularly tenuous time? And, the 2014 collapse was more about, I think consensus believes it was more about the U.S. taking market share because of the shale miracle. Are we seeing it again, at least on the margin? Because I think all of us, along with many others, have seen U.S. oil production in particular, surprising to the upside, come into the year with a much lower growth forecast, and we exceeded by, in some cases, double, like last year, more than double in terms of oil production growth. So don't look at inventories anymore, I guess, because we're still globally pretty low in crude products.
Let's break this down though, and let's do this on two buckets. Let's see if it makes any sense. But there's an infrastructure bucket I put for why people are making decisions. Like, for example, we've talked many times on the show about the fight for LNG in Europe, and you have to be competitive to give some of these buyers of these countries long-term contracts where, like, hey, we have the output to give you LNG long-term. We have that element. We have the Saudi element where they need cash because they're building a city, they're building an airline, they're paying for golf, et cetera. That's sort of my infrastructure bucket of why people are making sort of decisions now. And then there's kind of what you've said, Mark, that there's these decisions about, well, maybe China is hitting peak demand so that there's like real term decisions. What's the mix now on the oil price? Are there infrastructure bets going on, or are these real time existing bets for why Saudis cut output or the OPEC cut output, et cetera?
So I'm going to try to be consistent with what I've said on here, at least over the last little bit.
Collide will tell us whether you are or not.
That I can remember. So number one, I'm still at worldwide demand goes up 1 million barrels a day per year. We're going to do that for the foreseeable future. So I don't really see the structural demand changing. China's going to ebb and flow, et cetera. I think where my change has come and the mea culpa is just totally on supply. I've always said that I didn't think OPEC had excess capacity. Given the cuts they've made, they do have it. And I think U.S. supply just keeps showing up. Yeah. And that's the shock to the upside that I haven't been able to get my head around, and I'm finally just crying uncle. Okay, we really are that good.
Well, and the analyst who famously coined the term super cycle back in the mid 2000s, Arjun Murthy,
was that you?
Has been consistent in characterizing what we're in the midst of now is super vol. And I think the evidence of the last certainly 10 years and most certainly 5 years suggests that that's the case. The demand side angst is driven by in your assessment that we're going to continue to see structural growth in demand is driven by a kind of unilateral fixation on what's going on with China. There are a lot of other parts of the world that are way lower on the per GDP consumption level. And
India, Africa,
one of my favorite terms again. I just think there's an ambient buoyancy to demand, particularly from places like India. It's just going to come, someone else ultimately takes over the driver's seat, whether that's India or a combination of India and Asia Pacific. But I don't think there's anything that's stopping that train, certainly before the end of this decade. I still believe the forecast that OPEC put out in 2020 for 2045 growth of, I believe it was 8 million barrels a day, up from 100, declines in OECD and growth in non-OECD, particularly the eastern part and southern part of non-OECD. It's just that it's been much easier to ascertain demand with the 800-pound gorilla of demand growth driver in economic terms by focusing on China, because those numbers have been such an overwhelmingly large proportion of demand growth over the past decade and a half. So, but maybe a simpler way is population growth.
Nailed it.
And aspirations for more prosperity. I just, I think structurally we're 1 million barrels a day plus per year, but it's going to be super volatile.
Where's the U.S. production coming from? Is it just across the board, or is it small independents?
Bakken's maxed out, Eagle Ford's maxed out, and it's all coming from the Permian, right?
Mostly Permian.
God bless them, man.
And we have kind of the lurching capacity and takeaway issues associated with the Permian, not the least of which is growing associated gas production and the need to process wet gas and extract NGLs, et cetera. We're going to have enough long haul pipes to get gas to the Gulf Coast, ultimately for industrial consumption or export. Back to your point of who's willing to make the kind of the longer term infrastructure bets. I think we need at least a handful more B.5 to 2 BCF a day pipes to come online here in the next 5 to 7 years. Don't know what that number is, but we're bumping up against pipe limits again with the rate of growth that we're seeing.
So are you saying right now you're not pro wood pellets? So Enviva, remember Enviva? Did we talk about Enviva? They were building the world's largest wood pellet plant in the U.S. for contracts they had contracts worth more than $20 billion to supply overseas power plants with alternatives to coal. And they're in bankruptcy. But are we saying that oil and gas is going to save the day once again? Even though we have output constraints, that's the big issue. And that's one of the issues we keep talking about is the infrastructure problem in the U.S. especially. How do we get it out? How do we export it? We're down pipelines because we need more, because there's more production coming online and there's more demand. But what's driving the demand in the U.S. is what I'm interested in.
And I think demand in the U.S. has been flat, right? Are we declining in terms of our oil use?
Yeah, we're sending more out, both in terms of crude and product, than we were 20 years ago. Gasoline demand's mostly flat.
Yeah.
And one of the predicted offsets or much faster penetration rate on EV adoption impacting U.S. gasoline demand that we've all seen and talked about is certainly not happening as fast. So, does that switch over to kind of a mass adoption of hybrids where you just inherently have higher efficiency and that takes a bite out of gasoline demand? I don't know.
I know one of the top traders of gasoline in this country. So I might have to ask him and come back next week with some thoughts.
There you go. Because at the end of the day, I think even when we were hitting pretty high, now we were in the middle of pandemic, we had supply chain issues, et cetera. Even when we were hitting pretty high gasoline prices, we didn't stop buying our SUVs.
Right.
So
we had almost 30 years of CAFE standards, and that ultimately had an unintended consequence of people wanted higher performance and bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we barely moved the needle on miles per gallon. And look, I think the average age of a passenger vehicle in the U.S. has gone up from like 12 to 13 years.
I mean, people can't afford to buy new cars.
Yeah.
So, we'll see. I go back to, expecting or trying to push a revolutionary time frame on things in the physical world.
Yeah.
Is really, really difficult. So,
let's get out.
2050 is not that far away.
So let's get out with this question, since we got Clyde and we'll be able to check this. Where are we a year from now in terms of
oil price?
In terms of oil price.
I mean, again, we always caveat with like wars and natural disasters, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think, if the economy, it's all economy driven. If the economy is going well, I think oil price will actually go up. I think it's going to be 80. That's my prediction.
Where are you?
I think coincident with the swoon that we've got, what's likely a pretty aggressive series of rate cuts coming. We have a higher probability of a softer landing. And the old adage, the cure for low prices is low prices. I think we see north of 80.
So you're north 80. So
outside of election year influence, I still believe inventories matter.
Right.
And probably line up. We were talking about it before you came in, Kirk, what Jeff Curry was recently saying. Maybe you could paraphrase that for us.
Yeah, I did. I saw a clip on it as opposed to actually hearing him, the full interview, but Curry was saying that those expecting the oil glut are going to be sadly mistaken, that, to your point, inventories matter.
I'd like to break that down a little bit more relative to what he said in terms of the overhang of, 2.8 million barrels a day of offline OPEC core production or supply.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to say we're below 60 a year from now. That the U.S. just going to keep pumping it out, and at the end of the day, if Trump gets there, there will be at least a bit of a regulatory push or friendlier environment to get people to drill more. I'm not sure that really matters vis-a-vis investors, but we just keep drilling really good wells.
Balance sheets are in much better shape than they were even 4 years ago. And nobody's outspending cash flow. And if nobody of note.
And if Harris wins, I still think she'll make a move if she has the numbers to ban fracking. But we all know you don't have to ban fracking. You can just have the EPA tighten down on things.
Right.
Hey, go look at this.
That's a political statement more than reality.
But it's not going to be able to take impact within a year from now. So whoever wins, it doesn't matter. I'm at below 60 a year from now.
Below 60.
Below 60. So
5 handle or lower?
I'm in the 5s. We'll be in the 5s.
5 handle.
5 handle a year from now. We'll go ahead and mark this. Where's the little thing we push on here? Mark. Okay.
So you're with Kramer.
Oh God. I didn't realize that.
Who just said,
now's not the time to own oil. There we go. Maybe that's what it takes. Yates and Kramer coming together to save the industry.
Maybe you can unblock Dan.
There we go. So last night's debate, it was interesting. So obviously the girlfriend's on the other side of the political spectrum, and we were talking about it this morning, but generally I think we pretty much agreed. Trump just looked petty last night. He was, bickering about stuff. He can't control himself. He took the bait. He got off his one-liners that I think, are his kind of funny one-liners. Like, why don't we go wake Biden up at 4 p.m. and sign an order to make this happen? I think she probably had the questions in advance. And even if she didn't, you could have anticipated these questions. She had a script and she read the script just like she had rehearsed it, and she stayed on it. So I think she wound up looking better than he did. I think ultimately, though, at the end of the day, I'm not sure this debate's going to change the numbers one way or another.
Not at all. But I do think she took a playbook from George W. Bush, which was just repeat exactly what we tell you to repeat. Don't deviate. And you look like you're pretty smart if you can do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And
well, she is a litigator and a prosecutor. So, that kind of pre-debate preparation is much more natural. And she knows the risk or the dangers of deviating from script.
Yeah.
And demeanor matters a lot. And I think, forget which analyst was talking about it before the debate, what one piece of advice or what one kind of major goal should each of the candidates have. And it's at the highest level, it's those undecided voters. And more specifically, in the area where the debate was actually held in Pennsylvania, which, I think takes center stage on election night again. And the drama comes down to who wins Pennsylvania. I agree with the seemingly off script or impulsive reactions. There was a lot more meat and a lot more specificity, I think, that could have been repeated, particularly around things like energy policy and the Inflation Reduction Act.
Mm-hmm.
But every answer or every discussion seemed to deviate into immigration. There was a lot of that.
That's the global issue right now. I mean,
it's number 2 behind the economy of what polling says people want to talk about.
This whole like social media storm about the cats being strung up and eaten. But basically, it's a town of 20,000 where 5,000 immigrants were dropped off. You think that changes the makeup of that community?
Yeah.
It's an issue.
That's actually, Laura and I were talking about that this morning, that, she was saying Trump looked ridiculous for saying it. And I'm saying, well, there's supposedly are reports it's actually happening. There were city council meetings where people were coming in this summer saying, hey, they're stealing my pet. Yeah. So there's evidence that it was actually happening. But to your point, the tragedy is flooding a small town with immigrants. And it's not that anyone's against immigrants. It's just that city didn't have the infrastructure to handle the influx of people. And that's the tough thing.
I don't even know why this is an issue, and I'm not really sure. I mean, you can go anywhere in the world. If you're somewhere illegally, and this is, of course, a property rights state, of course, but if you're anywhere in the world illegally, we have the right to remove you, period, end of story. It's not even a question. I don't even know why this is such a big issue. It shouldn't be, because what happens if you bring a lot of people illegally into any community, it creates issues. And those issues are, well, I'm paying taxes, so I'm paying for you, you're not paying for me. It just creates a lot of incentives that don't create the best neighbor. End of story.
It strains resources fundamentally.
Absolutely.
In Springfield, Ohio, which is at the center, at the top of the focus right now, which is, I've heard, a town of 50 to 60,000 people, and you have 20,000
Haitian immigrants
all of a sudden that are part of that community. Small towns like that, the resource allocation takes on a big strain. Forget about all the other kind of absurd stuff that we see on Twitter and YouTube, et cetera.
Funny, albeit. Funny.
But it seems black and white in terms of the legality or illegality of coming across the border. The nuances I've observed over the last several years is we seem to have a lot more or a lot broader and looser definition of political asylum. And that's, by and large, I think, what has been used to rationalize or justify what at its most fundamental level is crossing illegally into the United States is breaking the law, breaking immigration law.
No.
And so, but there's an exception for classifications. I don't know all the kind of the legal language and the details and the policy of seeking political asylum, that we have exceptions to those. Now,
I mean, because one of them is, I want to make sure I say this just so that, because we're talking about something very nuanced and I don't want things to
Your
get...
girlfriend's listening, so let's hear it, Chuck.
Yeah, fair enough.
Is this a disclaimer?
But I mean, you start thinking about the shames of American history, and obviously slavery's at the top of the list, but up in the top 5 is not allowing the Jews to come here during World War II and when they were under the Nazis. I mean, we did not allow them to come here, and look what they suffered in terms of the Holocaust. So, I mean, to some degree, as the beacon of freedom in the world, we should, under situations like that, accept people in, and we haven't. So
yeah, but unfortunately, Chuck, this is not this issue is very similar to this whole clean movement and energy, where the economics don't make any sense.
Right.
We're moving everything, as the biggest issue this summer. We haven't talked about this since I've been on Nantucket. I was on Nantucket when the biggest windmill blade in all of North America cracked and fell into the ocean. And the entire south shore of Nantucket, where I surf, was shut off for 2 days because there's fiberglass everywhere. And it's dangerous. Boats are running over it. People are getting hurt. And
that was one blade.
One blade.
Yeah.
And no one seems to think, oh, this is a big scam. By the way, offshore wind, this is hilarious because I'm kind of laughing that when they get in high winds, they don't work. I don't know what happens. They spin too fast, even though they're rated for high winds, whatever. But this is the whole scam that we've been sold on a bill of goods about this whole clean tech movement. The earth is being destroyed by oil and gas. We've got to move to clean, even though it's way too expensive. And people are just tired of the bullshit. And that's the same thing with immigration. Don't tell me people are running here for asylum.
Yeah.
And I'm paying for them and they're stealing my animals. And to me, it's like that. We all know it's bullshit. Let's just call it. It's bullshit.
Yeah, no, I was agreeing with Mark's point. And I'm like, that we've totally
I feel sorry for people that are looking for a better life. Because I've said this my whole life. If I lived on one side of the Rio Grande and I could make $5 more an hour, I'd be jumping across the river.
Yeah.
I'd do it. But the point is that as a infrastructure issue or as a sovereign issue, we can't allow that to happen because we can't even feed our own people because we're mismanaging funds, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. No, I think what we said agreed with each other.
Yeah.
And it also highlights that it should be a legislative process in terms of we ought to have that collective discussion in Congress and say, yes, we are going to declare what's going on. And let's use Haiti as the example as a justifiable reason to undertake this expense, or let's not. But we ought to discuss it. And unfortunately, we've had such gridlock there on immigration that it's been done at the executive level, in effect, by fiat.
I mean, it's almost irony when you think about Toby Rice and him leading the charge for why can't we export LNG? Because the same people are saying, wait a minute, this is a sacred resource. We need to keep it here, or whatever the reasoning is, or it's bad for the environment. But it's funny how we're speaking out of both sides of our mouth here,
Yeah. I think we're getting it back to substantive policy and political highlights or things that could have been hammered more consistently and with a much calmer demeanor. I think back to one of these sage old oil market analysts, I can't recall, back 20 years ago, said about OPEC don't listen to what they say. Watch what they do.
Watch what they do.
And so Trump had way more opportunity if he'd have been more deliberate and calmer about responses to point out the fact that she's telling you all about what she's going to do, what the vision is, but what have they done? You've been in the co-pilot seat for 3.5 years. And particularly as it relates to energy policy, I thought the IRA would have gotten a lot more scrutiny and attack, just given what's happened with wind and solar, and particularly EVs, and the fact that, and we talked about this, that we've got $7.5 to $8 billion earmarked for 500,000 charging stations, and we built 8. The absolute irony, almost ludicrous irony, of calling something the Inflation Reduction Act when that level of public spending does the opposite.
Right.
And I think he got off a little bit off track on some of the numbers and the scale and the magnitude. One in particular is that, this is the worst ever inflationary period we've ever seen. If you were around in the mid-late 70s during the Carter administration with 21% interest rates, it just doesn't, it doesn't quite compare. But there's plenty of substantive things that he could have repeated with respect to direct policy outcomes that have been put in place over the last 3.5 years that I just don't think he took near enough opportunity to do that.
And I will say this is pro-Trump people always talk about how he destroyed such and such in the debate. I've never thought he's been a very good debater. I mean, Biden imploded last time and we saw who he was, but I don't think Trump did. Me and Oilfield Rando were texting during the Trump Biden debate, and I released our texting out on X, sent them all out. And I said, I thought Trump did a B-, and the reason he was a B and not a C was he at least took the throttle off of Biden because he could tell that Biden was imploding.
To be fair and balanced here, go watch old footage of a Reagan debate and a Clinton debate, and then evaluate.
Why don't you tell us what your
both candidates' performances? Just
they're fine,
very disciplined. Very
Reagan got destroyed by Mondale in the first debate. That's what everybody forgets. It was the second debate and the line of, I'm not going to make my opponent's youth and inexperience an issue in this campaign
for sheer political advantage. But the not getting rattled, not getting ruffled, we're in a much more, as far as the electorate is concerned, we're in a much more emotive state, I think, in general, when you go to the ballot box than you are in a cognitive state. I saw an essay on this, and what we've been talking about, whoever it was on LinkedIn said, you guys have a lot of great discussion, but what's the solution? Well, the solution is to objectively focus on issues as a voter and actually do some research on things that affect you and understand them at a deeper level and vote accordingly, and not because, Taylor Swift came out and endorsed
a
candidate, or
I strenuously object.
Or Kid Rock endorses a candidate.
So when you said IRA, it's been a while I've been overseas, and the IRA means something else when you're about 20 miles from Ireland,
right,
and Scotland,
right.
And I have to tell you, man, I somehow was going to Turnberry, which is owned by Trump. And the moment I get in the car, my driver asked me, "What do you think of Trump?" So I'm not wanting to jump into this. I'm just here to play golf and be on a kissing baby tour. So I pivot and start talking about soccer. Holy shit, dude. I should have just talked about Trump, because this guy wanted to talk Trump. When we got to football, as they say, he was a Celtic fan. And I didn't realize in Glasgow, there's two I did know this because I'm a Celtic fan too. But Celtics are the Catholic team. The Rangers are the Protestant team. And this dude went on a Tourette's bender about how much he hates the Rangers. And unfortunately, on my way out of Turnberry 4 days later, I got the same driver and it kept going.
It was just the same thing.
So then he talks to me about how his grandfather, his uncle was killed, during the Protestant Catholic wars, and it's still a big deal. And he hates the Rangers. And I was like, holy shit, man, this is a real issue. So, and I didn't realize how it still runs deep. And then so after the riots were hitting, I was like, well, look, and now you have Protestants and Catholics going arm in arm against this immigration issue. He's like, yeah, that's great, but I hate the damn Rangers. Fuck those guys. So I kept asking guys, hey, do you follow football in the area? They all do. And I happen to only get Celtic guys, thank goodness, because their blood, it runs deep, those wars. And I didn't realize as an American, it's like, man, what is going on here? But the Catholic Protestant wars are still run deep, man. And it's interesting how, like, we're talking about all these interesting issues, but like you start traveling, you realize that, hey, these immigration issues, we got to fix it, but I still hate my neighbor because they believe something I don't. I think where we're headed with this election is we're right at this sort of tipping point where it has nothing to do about politics or your view of issues anymore. And it has everything to do with your loyalties. And that's something that we already knew. We've been talking about this for probably 4 years, but it's something that who knows what could happen. But I think there's a candlestick that, a dynamite that we're playing with, and it's going to go off in one way or the other. What do you think?
So I know I need to go pee. I'm going to go pee.
Wow. Shit.
Yeah. I want to know.
That was really good. I was like going.
Violated his first rule of recording.
Which is keep going?
No, make sure you
pee
before. I want to know, are there going to be subplots in the reality show of Live versus PGA? Or do people not care about that?
It'll be, I don't know. We'll ask them. I think younger demographics aren't it's a locked in thing over time. They're young enough. We'll see. They're millennials and Gen Z. They're pretty young. We'll ask. That's a great question. But these people have more engagement than most of, do you know the top 10 social media influencers in golf have a larger reach, more followers, and more engagement than the top 10 professional golfers in the world? Even if you add the PGA Tour, which aggregates of a lot of these players because they're not allowed to have like YouTube channels, et cetera, the influencers are bigger.
The influencers have more followers or more subscribers.
Followers and a lot more engagement. It's crazy.
Well, the game of golf at the highest level, I got to spend more time working on that as opposed to screen time.
Hey, you'll love this because you're a baseball fan. The winner of our reality show is throwing out the first pitch at the Astros game, not this Friday, but next Friday.
That's probably the Seattle series.
Don't even know. I think it's Seattle. I had to sign a waiver, and I had to license the rights from the MLB to be able to record the in stadium. There you go.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Hopefully it's a night on which there's only one first pitch.
We'll see. All right. Well, I guess are we going to wrap with Chuck gone? He has prostate issues.
We're gonna wait for him to come back. So you did see that there was a turbine failure in the UK as well. Dogger Bank.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, and I sent around that shot from China where they had the big turbines right on the beachfront.
Yeah,
where the typhoon went through in Hainan, and it wrecked several of them in the profile.
Well, how do we wrap this show, Chuck? Is your prostate okay, number one?
It feels okay now.
Okay,
That's
good.
good. And you violated your first rule of recording.
Yeah, I didn't pee before.
How often do you wake up at night, Chuck, to go to the bathroom?
So I actually have been to the urologist within the last year.
Are you using the whole fist there, Doc?
Exactly. Everybody should go get their prostate exam because all men are going to get prostate cancer. And the key is you got to catch the aggressive one earlier. Do what?
I already got that out of the way.
But I wake up, call it this morning, it was 5 a.m, needed to pee. And I went back to sleep afterwards. But starting at age 25, the average male wakes up at least once a night to pee.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
There you go.
I did not know that.
So anyway, does feel like making a very awkward transition to talking about 9/11, but we'd be remiss recording.
Hey, the PGA Tour and the PGA Tour and the PIF Fund are meeting today. A lot of people are saying that's kind of ironic or a little weird, but
yeah, this
is a somber day.
No, it really was. I was watching some of this stuff this morning, and you got Pete Hegseth on Fox actually made a really good point that no matter all the stuff that happened, withdrawing from Afghanistan, the way it all turned out, a lot of people showed a lot of patriotism and a lot of love of country and made a lot of sacrifice for 3,000 people that lost their lives that day.
A lot of neighborliness.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it felt there for a while that we truly all were Americans and united and stuff. And it's too bad we can't get back there.
Well, I miss you boys, my fellow Americans. Great to see you guys.
Good to see you. And congrats on the
thank you. I was telling
on the entertainment venture.
My friend over here that the winner of our reality show is throwing out the first pitch of the Astros game. We wrap on a Friday, so that night.
Nice.
They're going to be helicoptered from the golf course to the stadium.
Nice.
It's going to be great.
That's awesome.
Roof open. Are they going to land in center field?
We're still working on details. I doubt it, but maybe. Maybe we'll just throw them out. I don't know.
That outfield grass doesn't need any more stress. They've had concerts in the middle of the season. You look at it on television, it looks terrible.
Well, can't comment.
There we go. If you enjoyed the show today, please subscribe, share it with a friend, and good to see y'all. Peace out.